Good evening, everyone. Captain ACQ. How are you? I'm very well, thank you. After a long flight today from Milan to Doha, it was for Long Distance Fridays, and got about 45 minutes, maybe an hour this evening, just to sit here on the ground at Newcastle, enjoying the scenery and ask any questions that people may have regarding the Airbus A320 Neo. The fly-by-wire mod, as you can see in front of us, looking very nice this evening. So we did a Q&A session not long ago, and it was very popular. And I actually did a flight during it, and of course there were that many questions being asked, I couldn't get around to answering all of them, and so that's what this evening's about. We're probably not going to actually leave the ground this evening, but unless there's something anyone actually particularly wants to see. But we're, as I say, we're sat on the ground at Newcastle. The weather's looking wonderful, and I'm also just trying out, I'm trying to find the ground crew. Where are they? Because I added a new mod in for the first time. I should now have EasyJet ground crew next time we're out and about. Oh, there we go. Oh, if you can see that, he's actually got EasyJet on his back, so that's wonderful. So that's great. Drag Pearson, hello, thank you for joining us. Daniel, hello. Hope you're all prepped for a nice weekend. And a turtle, good evening. So I'm always very curious to know where everyone's from in the world. I know obviously I stream during the day UK time, but I'm aware that all the followers and subscribers to the channel are not in the UK, so it's always nice to know where people are. So let's have a look. Magnus, good evening. Can you explain more about landings at London City? I've tried it a few times now, but I've not managed to do it. Okay, so with regards to London City Airport, London City is a little bit more complicated because it doesn't have a standard ILS approach angle. The standard ILS approach angle is normally around 3 degrees, 3.3 degrees. So that's the angle that the aircraft comes in on the ILS approach. However, because of the buildings that surround London City Airport, it has to have a steeper approach angle, so the aircraft has to come down much more quicker at a steeper angle than most approaches. I'm just looking now to see if I can bring up the charts for London City, so I'll be able to give you a little bit more information on that. So if you just bear with me 1 minute. So the normal runway that they try and use is runway 27, so it's got where we're looking here, just to see the right, so it's got a localizer descent angle of 5.5 degrees, so that is very steep, which means only certain aircraft can actually do it. The Airbus A320 in Flight Sim is not really permitted to do that. However, the Airbus A318, the small version, it can perform the short takeoff and landings. So yeah, it's I've got what aircraft have you been trying to attempt that particular approach in? As I say, it's not an easy one. So if you're trying to do it in one of the large airliners, you may find it difficult, if not almost impossible. And even if you do get down, you've then got to stop, which doesn't always work as well. So Magnus, I hope that's explained and answered your question. Let me know if you want to know anything more about it. Basically, it's the steep approach path angle that makes that particular airport quite difficult to land at in anything bigger than the Airbus 318. A Patriot, what happens if the ILS isn't transmitted to airplanes? Okay, well, the ILS, the instrument landing system, they can go out of service. Sometimes they obviously need repairs doing to them, which they'll try and obviously do when when the airport isn't that busy, but that can't always be guaranteed. So if the ILS isn't working for any particular reason, well, there are always backups to use. The main reason that we have the ILS is because the instrument landing system is for use in bad weather, low visibility. As we saw quite recently, you can get the aircraft on the ground with very little visibility using the ILS. But there are other approaches. There's the RNAV approach, which is the area navigation GPS approach that you can use, but of course that requires the pilot to be able to see the runway at a fair distance to make sure that he can land safely. There's other approaches as well, VOR approaches, which involves using airport charts to make sure you track that. But again, the pilots have to be able to see the airport by a certain distance, otherwise they can't make the landing. So the ILS is really there as a foolproof way of getting the aircraft down to the ground in bad weather. Of course, it's used in good weather as well, because it's just good practice and it's accurate. But if for some reason the ILS isn't working and the airport's in bad weather, then they would probably have to stop operations, depending on what the runway visibility range is. So I hope that's answered that question. Any more, do ask again, and I'll try and explain if there's anything in more detail. Heng Yu, will you make a flight tutorial for flight sim beginners? I think the important question with that is how beginner do you want it to be? If you're talking about full tutorials starting from the basics in, say, a Cessna or single engined aircraft, I don't really go into those. To be honest, it's been a long time since I flew Cessnas. I'm on the A320 now here in the sim and have been for a long time. But if you're talking about just the basics of taking off, flying a traffic pattern and coming back into land, then yeah, that's probably something we could do and have a look at. So hope that helps. Tim Cunner, does the fly-by-wire A320 feel anything like the real one? From a visual point of view, yes, very much so. From an actual handling dynamics point of view, not really. In fact, it's arguable to say that the real aircraft is actually easier to land than the Flight Sim A321, just because of the way that the dynamics work at the moment. But I do know Fly-by-Wire at the moment are working on their own flight dynamics system separate to Microsoft Flight Simulator. Once that comes along, then it'll be very interesting to see, because they're hoping that will be very, very close and very accurate. So it's a good start, Tim, but certainly there are some bugs that need ironing out. The one that I'm suffering from a lot at the moment is not so much the actual touchdown and landing, but once you do, very occasionally something goes wrong and you lose a little bit of rudder control. You'll have seen that from some of the live streams. You get a beautiful touchdown and then the aircraft just veers off to one side or the other, which wouldn't happen in real life. Well, not without a 30-knot crosswind, which hasn't happened, thankfully, yet in the flight sim. So yeah, Magnus, I've been trying the London City landing in the A320, but new to flight sim, so still learning, trying to understand landing charts, etc., and setting up the flight management computer. Well, we're going to have a little quick look at that. We might hop into the cockpit in a little bit, have a little look at that. But if you're trying it in the A320, I'm afraid you are setting yourself up for a little bit of a fail, because that is exceedingly difficult. I might challenge myself one day just to see if we can do that, if anyone fancies that. Daniel, no, sadly you're quite right. I'm not a real A320 pilot, but I have been very lucky enough to have been in the A320 commercial level simulators, so I can speak with a little bit of experience there. Lewis, Ryan, good evening, my friends. No, we're not actually doing a flight tonight. We're just doing a Q&A, like we did a few weeks ago when we did do a flight, but obviously my attention was focused on the flying, and trying to answer the questions at the same time is a little bit difficult, so I thought we'd just sit on the ground here. And of course, if anyone wants me to jump into the cockpit, we can go through and set up a flight. We'll just not actually taxi out and take it. So no problems there. Captain Viv, can you find a way that fixes the default A320? Oh, you know, I know you're annoyed at that question. My simple answer, Captain Viv, is download the latest fly-by-wire developer version, not the stable version, which I know sounds a little bit crazy, but it's the developer version you want. And that, I've not had a problem with that. That works perfectly well. Perfectly well. Lewis Ryan, what are the pages I really need to look at on the sim brief before a flight so I don't read a lot of rubbish? Okay, if I just bring up, I knew someone was going to ask me about this, so I have got, bear with me, there is a little flight plan. So this one we did quite recently. I think it's from Newcastle to, where's this one from and to? Newcastle to south of Italy. So what you really want to be looking at, everything that you can see here is very, very important. You need to look at all that stuff. There's your flight route as well that will be loaded into the flight management computer. That, the planned block fuel, that is the amount of fuel you need to take with you. Very, very important. And then these are all the waypoints, and so they're the waypoints that you're passing. That's how long into your flight you should be passing it. That's how much fuel you should have at that point, or rather that's the minimum amount of fuel you should have at that point. If you've got less fuel than that, then you've either loaded it wrong or you've got a fuel leak. And then you are right, as you scroll down and down, these are all the waypoints, your times, etc. So the final waypoint is the airfield. That's the time it should take you to get there. That's how much fuel you should have minimum when you arrive. You've then got the weather at the various airfields. So that's quite important. These are the winds at various waypoints along your flight. So there's the weather again. There's a lot of weather information, as again all pilots need in real life. Then you've got the NOTAMs, which are the notice to airmen, and you're right, it is a bit of a drag to read all of those, and to be honest, if you're in the simulator, you probably don't need to read all of those. Right down at the bottom, though, you do get the significant weather charts, which tells you at this particular point there was some cumulonimbus clouds up to 30,000 feet at that point. We also had a jet stream flying across there. So the NOTAMs really are probably the bits that you don't need to read when in a flight simulator, but yeah, everything else is pretty valid and certainly worth paying attention to and keeping an eye on. I have got a tutorial coming out in a little while which shows you how to put an entire flight plan like that into the MCDU. So yeah, fair enough. Right, a Patriot, who when gets to decide when pilots use IFR, VFR, and what are some of the different rules? Or is the only rule you use strictly instruments and the others strictly by sight? It's a general rule of thumb that if you're flying VFR, you should be below a certain altitude and you need to basically stay out of the clouds. You are responsible for the safety of yours and other aircraft around you in VFR. In IFR, of course, you're using the instruments, as you say. The airfields, the airports, all state in their ATIS whether they are currently operating IFR or VFR. So the airfields decide on what level that they are working. Boxer Steve, hello. Yes, we've got the fly-by-wire currently working on an A380, which can't wait to get that, but I'll need some training on it because I've never hopped into the simulator of an A380, only the A320. A-Turtle with VATSIM, etc. Do you need to set anything up for model matching? Is it just default? To be honest, I've not delved too far into the model matching, just because yes, it will look nice, it'll look pretty, etc. But you're going to put a load of wear onto your graphics processor and your CPU. So to keep those frame rates up, I just have it as the default setting, which means at the moment, other pilots on VATSIM just get displayed as generic traffic. So the AI traffic models that you get in Flight Sim 2020, they are the ones that are the ones that they appear. Christian, hey Gav, have you had the left-right swinging bug after the latest patch, or did they fix it? Well, I thought they were going to fix it because they did mention something about it in the release notes, but no, I have had the left-right swinging bug, as it's now affectionately called. Still, turn off sec 1 and it fixes it, no problem. Box Steve, I don't know if this is the right place to ask, but I'm having problems with VPilot on FSX. Could not connect to the network. Also, sim connect errors everywhere. I haven't had VPilot on FSX for a while now, so I can't think what may be causing that. It could maybe be a permissions issue thing, but if there's anyone in the chat that has more information on that, please help Steve out there. I'm afraid I can't help with that. Daniel, what's your favourite destination? Anywhere the weather's good. I don't know, I don't really have one. I mean, I've got a soft spot for Manchester, but that's just because it's my local airport. Gibraltar's always fun to fly into with the approach there. So yeah, I think the great thing about this simulator is we can actually fly anywhere, can't we? And it looks very, very real. So it's just a matter of exploring the world and seeing what you like. And you've got to remember, every landing, every flight is different. No two flights are ever the same. Captain Viv, do you know how to fly the 747? And I'm afraid I don't. There will be other channels on here, I'm certain, dedicated to the 747 and flying it, but I'm an Airbus boy, so I can't fly the 747. I could probably jump into the cockpit, start it up and fly it around, but in terms of actually getting into the nitty-gritty of things, I'm afraid not. Glenn, is there a release date yet for 05.0? I know it's coming for the fly-by-wire guys. I don't know an exact release date, I'm afraid. So what else we got? So James, here's a good one. Every flight I do, a user point comes out from nowhere on the star and it just flies around in circles. Do I have this problem? Yes, I do have this problem. You'll normally find the user points, they start at the beginning of the star, so it's sort of like the gap between your main flight plan and the star. If you can see the user point ahead of time, try and hit the direct button and go to a waypoint after the user point, or even 2 waypoints after the user point if there's no terrain in the way, and that should hopefully then skip over it. And I've seen a lot of people doing this, so hopefully this will help quite a few of you. If you're on the star approach, or you just arrive into the star approach, and suddenly, and I've had this happen, the aircraft veers off to the very last waypoint of your flight plan, and it's usually the runway. So you'll be doing a nice descent approach, and suddenly your aircraft will veer off to the right or the left, and it's taking you towards the runway. Well, we don't want that because we haven't planned for that. We want to carry on going straight ahead for however many miles before we make the turn to the runway. It literally is a case of pull the heading bug, so you're in heading mode, get the aircraft just flying straight again back towards where it was, then go down to the flight management computer and just go direct to the next to the waypoint that either it was originally heading towards before the user point crept in, or the one after it. Hopefully that will solve the problem for you. Parag, hi, I'm having huge stutters while I come to land at any airport. CPU goes up, GPU goes up. So using the i5 6th core 6 threads 1660 Ti, should I upgrade? This is a bit of a hardware question, for which I will hold my hands up and say I am not the most computer literate guy in the world, unless they're the Airbus computers. All I will say is, regardless of which airport you're coming in to land, as the aircraft obviously gets closer to the ground, the computer has got a lot more to render. There's trees, scenery, buildings, traffic, AI traffic as well. I know it's a big bug and drain on resources, so maybe just try pulling back some of the sliders if you can, but you will notice a frame rate drop when you're getting close to the airports, particularly if they are the handcrafted airports where there is a lot of individually placed items, baggage carts, trolley carts, because they look fantastic, but they're going to be a drain on resources once they start to get rendered. So, our A-Turtle has helped with that, so I'm going to let him hand that over to him. Box, if you really want to get into VATSIM, watch the tutorials. Oh, thank you. Good. Yeah, VATSIM is great. Anyone that wants to get into VATSIM, do check out the first time on VATSIM tutorial, and that will get you on. That will get you working on there. Zam, why do I like the A320 so much? I think it's probably just because I've got real world friends that fly the real world pilot friends, I should say, that fly the A320, and so they taught me how to fly it. And it's kind of stuck. It's also an aircraft that can do, particularly the Neo version, it can do the short haul, it can do the medium haul, and it can do long haul, 6-7 hour flights as well if you're really going to push it. So it's just so versatile, and it's a lovely aircraft to fly. There's also different varieties as well. You remember, you've got the A318, A319, A321. You've got the Neo versions of all of those, and I believe pretty soon we're going to have the A321 XL or LR, whatever they're going to call it. Basically, the long range version, which is going to be designed to fly, basically as a long-range aircraft, but in an A320 body. So it's just very, very versatile, and the computers on board, it's intuitive, and I like the fly-by-wire, which is nice. When the Autopilot failed the other night because of the bug that's going around Flight Simulator, as was, you can still fly the aircraft quite comfortably just because it's fly-by-wire. You just almost aim and point, and you don't need your hand on the side stick all the way through. It'll just quite happily sit and cruise. Lewis, are the SIDS and stars on the sim the same as in real life? Yes and no. Most of them are, and they replicate them very, very well. Just occasionally you'll get a little problem because they don't quite match up to the real world ones in terms of the routes, and it'll want you to fly to a waypoint that either doesn't exist in real life or it's a made-up phantom waypoint. But I would say so far 90% of the SIDS and stars that I've flown have matched the real-life charts. And of course, if you have a subscription to Navigraph, you can see those charts. They're almost the real ones. So you can see how accurate they are. In the UK as well, you can actually download the real charts. NATS provides those for free. If you do a quick Google search for NATS charts or something like that, you can sign up for free and download the aerodrome charts for all the airports in the UK. But could you do a joystick cam stream sometime? Sure, we'd all love that. Do you know what? I actually don't have a webcam. So that's the reason you never get to see me. You just get to listen to me. Original name, great name. I was wondering, what is the anti-skid lever in the cockpit? Right, let me just jump into the cockpit. And there we go. So here's your anti-skid down here, and just by default you leave it on, and it basically it does what it says on the TIMs. It prevents the aircraft from skidding. It's mainly used as well in damp conditions and when taxiing as well. If you've obviously got a lot of surface water and you're taxiing, you want to slow down, and it's always left on. I can't think of a time that I've ever actually turned it off. So I hope that vaguely answers that question. It's just stop. You don't want to be aquaplaning in a 60-ton aircraft. What is a good altitude to catch the approach on the airport's red line? Lewis, not entirely sure what you mean by the red line, but a good altitude to capture the approach. I'm assuming you mean an ILS approach. That varies from airport to airport. Some you get. Sorry, I've just realised the flight plan was still on the screen, wasn't it? So the anti-skid, just to show you, that's just here. You get, just going back, so the altitude that you use to capture the ILS at an airport is called the platform altitude. That's the altitude that the airport charts tell you need to be at to intercept the ILS and the glide slope. Usually you'll find it is around anywhere between 2,500 feet to 3,500-4,000 feet, but again it does vary airport by airport. And you've got to remember, of course, if you're at 4,000 feet, the localizer, the glide slope will capture further away from the airfield. If the platform altitude is 2,000 feet, it's going to be a much shorter final for capturing the glide slope, because that will come into play much closer to the airport. Christian is like the ABS of a car. Yeah, that's not a bad description, actually. When do you use flaps 3 for landing instead of flaps 4? Or flaps full, as it is in the A320. Usual config for the A320 is flaps full. Again, I can't recall using a flaps 3. Certainly not flaps 2. You always want full, a minimum flaps 3 for landing. So flaps 4 is the main one. That I would imagine the only time you'd use flaps 3 is if it's a fast approach. So if you've got maybe heavy winds and you're wanting to do a slightly faster approach than normal to make sure you're stable, get down on the ground, etc., then you can use a slightly higher setting of or lower setting of flaps, but it should always really be flaps full for landing. Then what about other Airbuses? Yeah, so I think I covered that. I like all the Airbus A320 series, again, just because I know how to fly them. A350, I would love to get into the A350 if a good steady level version of that comes aboard. So what I'll do is just to open up a few more questions if anyone has them. I'm just going to power up the aircraft, get some external power going, and then we've got a little bit of a look at the MCDU as well, if anyone wants to know about that. Adrian, I've been looking for someone to answer my question regarding the zero fuel weight central gravity figure and Microsoft Flight Simulator. When you adjust the zero fuel weight of 58.5, it gives in Flight Sim very low central gravity, zero fuel. Alright, Adrian, let's just have a quick look at that then for you. So if we open up the weights page, you can see here we've got the centre of gravity shown here on the top right. Now, in order to get your zero fuel weight centre of gravity, remember the first thing you have to do is empty your fuel tanks. Now, this is a true zero fuel weight centre of gravity. So however you load your aircraft, you'll see obviously the centre of gravity is changing. That's out of limits when it goes into red, and it also says down here centre of gravity out of limits. So your centre of gravity zero fuel weight can only be calculated, of course, if you have no fuel in the tanks. So what I tend to do when I'm loading a flight is I set the payload, which is dictated to by my SimBrief flight plan. Once I've got that, jot down the centre of gravity that you've got up here. So the zero fuel weight centre of gravity for, if this was the flight we were making, would be 19.01, which of course is rounded down for that. So 19.0. So there's your centre of gravity, zero fuel weight. After you've added your fuel, so I've added a little bit of fuel there now, obviously the centre of gravity has changed, but it's now no longer your zero fuel weight centre of gravity, it is your final weight centre of gravity, which is shown at 19.8. So if you're then going to the flight management computer to enter this information in, you go to your init B page, you'd enter your zero fuel weight, which I'm going to have to make one up. Enter the zero fuel weight of, we'll call it 59 tons, so 59.0. You would then enter your zero fuel weight centre of gravity, which was 19, not tons, just 19, which is 19.0. There we go. That is now entered correctly. So there's your zero fuel weight and your zero fuel weight centre of gravity. If you're looking then to go and set the flight control, the horizontal stabilizer trim position, you will use the fully loaded centre of gravity, which was on the display there 19.8, and I do talk about that in a tutorial video for setting that up. So I think the thing to do as well, Adrian, is make sure it's very easy. I know you can just click these buttons and it gives you this down here. Well, this isn't accurate. What is accurate, because these numbers here, they actually come from the loading screen. So when you're on the globe screen, the flight planning screen, if you haven't set all your weights up there, then it becomes these are the weights that you'll get shown. But of course, by that point, you've already entered your payload of passengers and the payload of fuel. So the zero fuel weight centre of gravity is wrong. So the best way to do it is be inside the cockpit and do it in the way that I've just described, because those figures there, as you can see, do not match the figures that we've just popped in. Hope that explains that a little bit more. I saw your bio saying use self-loading cargo. Would you be able to do a review or show it some time? Because all the reviews I can find in YouTube don't show much at all. They probably don't, just because it's really, really easy to use. I've not actually got it loaded up at the moment. But, I think basically the instruction manual that comes with it is probably the best thing you're going to get off there. A tutorial video on it certainly wouldn't take very long at all. It literally is. Fire it up. Make sure, of course, you've also got the FE, or what's the program called? The I forgot what it's called now. The FSUPIPC, something like that. Again, it's in the description for it's in the instructions for self-loading cargo when you download it. You need to have that running in the background before you open self-loading cargo, and that's just the client to connect it to the simulator. But once you've got that running up and running, then yeah, it works absolutely fine, and the instructions that come with it are very, very self-explanatory. Original name, SimBrief is on the screen. Have I not got rid of that yet? Oh no, it's gone now. That's good. Right. Box Steve, you and your dad trying to figure out how to use the SDR to try and listen to the ATC messages. Okay, fair enough. I think your best bet for that is actually buying an airband radio. They're not that expensive now. Lewis, on SimBrief for airline code, you put the code into there, but it was the same route as what that aircraft flew. No, SimBrief is basically a flight planning tool. You can put whatever code in there, and you basically pop in there which airport you want to depart from, which airport you're arriving from. SimBrief then creates the flight plan for you, and very realistic it is too. What I would say is there is also someone on the channel very early on, there's a SimBrief tutorial as well, so go and check that out. That'll tell you how I'll show you how to have a quick look at the SimBrief. Adrian, do you know if fly-by-wire have the centre of gravity actually modelled, and does it affect the aircraft? Well, I've seen a lot of people saying that they're flying and their nose pitched up ridiculously steep during cruise, and I never am. So I would suggest that I think Microsoft have actually done quite a good job of modelling the centre of gravity, otherwise it probably wouldn't be there. So yeah, I think that is modelled from what I've seen. Matthew, is Navigraph worth it for VATSIM? Absolutely. I would not fly on VATSIM without it, because when the controller tells you to fly such and such a star or SID, then really you want the charts in front of you so you know where you're what you're doing, where you're going. There's an old saying in aviation: don't let your aircraft take you anywhere that your brain hasn't been 5 minutes earlier, and I think that's a good saying. Ghost Rider, why do I start streaming at 5 AM Eastern Standard? Is that Eastern Standard Time? I have no idea, mate. It's 20 to 10 in the evening here in the UK, so a quite convenient time for me. Apologies if it isn't for you. Original name, I love your accent. Where are you from? I'm from Sheffield in the north of England. So I'm like everybody else. I don't think I've got an accent, but I'm sure that's not true. Steve, have you ever landed successfully landed at London Airport? I've heard it's pretty hard. I'm presuming that's the London City Airfield. I haven't tried it. Well, I have, but not in the A320. In older simulators when I flew the Dash 8, but that was a long time ago. So yes, I have landed successfully there, but not in Flight Sim 2020. Right, let's have a look. So, yeah, so lots of people from England. Oh, Ghost Rider, you're in Florida. Oh, right, so if you're talking about the live streams that I do, that's because they normally start about between 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. Zulu time. So yeah, I guess that is pretty early for you. Zam, can I record a tutorial for this game? Simulator, my friend, simulator, not a game. To do a full tutorial in one video would be quite a lot of work, so there is a A320 tutorial section on my channel which covers a lot of different things, and I'm always happy to add more things if people request them. Just leave comments on the videos, I'll find them and come back and answer you. But yeah, so we've got tutorials on the ILS, setting up the MCDU and the flight plan, using SimBrief, and I've got a tutorial coming out this weekend which looks at calculating top of descent. So I'm going to have a little play with that as well. So you can help with looking at that. Christian, you have the centre of gravity in your weight menu in the game. I don't have that. Why is that? I shall show you for why. I had to get somebody else had to tell me this. If you go to your fuel and weight menu, what you've probably got is something that looks a little bit like that. There's all your weights, but quite right, where on earth is your centre of gravity? Well, Microsoft didn't tell you. If you extend the window to the right, ta-da, there's your centre of gravity, and it's all there. So hopefully that solved that problem. Original name, are you a pilot in real life? What do you do for entertainment on long-haul flights? Can you listen to music, for example? Unfortunately, I'm not a real commercial pilot. I failed my Class 1 UK medical several years ago, so I'm afraid I'm unable to carry passengers, certainly carry them for money. So all my information comes from real-world pilots that happen to be good friends of mine. I'm quite lucky in that respect. What do you enter in the block thing? I'm presuming you're talking about the fuel. So if I just go back down to here. Alright, so the block there in orange, that's the amount of fuel that you're going to take with you for your flight. If I just open this flight plan that we'd got, just check you can see that. Yes, so if I just open that, the amount of fuel you want to take is not this figure here. So you've got a fuel there of 8751. That's not the fuel you want to take. The fuel you want to take is this one, your planned block fuel. So that is the figure you want to enter. So if we're going to take that amount of fuel, that's 8.9 tons, because we're working tons, it's just easier than saying 8,951 kilograms. So if we go back to the weights menu, I forgot what I said now. What did I say? 8.9. So we're just using the slider here to get it as close to that as possible for now. There we go, 8.935, that looks good. So I would enter into the block there 8.9, because you can just have a quick look up here, check that's loaded. There we go, so 8.9 tons, and we can enter that 8.9. Oh, hang on, I need to clear all those other things from the scratch pad. 8.9, pop that in there, and then you need to enter your trip wind, which is basically adding together all the tailwinds and headwinds you're going to experience over the course of the flight, and it gives you an average figure, which is so the trip wind for this particular flight plan was a headwind of 18 knots, which you just pop in literally as a H18. Sometimes it'll be a tailwind, so then it'll be a T18, and you pop that in there. Once the computer's got all that, if you keep watching that screen for a minute, it should then give us, or in fact no, it won't give us all our fuel calculations, and that's just because I'd not set up any information on the init A page, so the aircraft doesn't even know where we're travelling from or to. I could actually just pop that in. So it was Echo Golf November Tango Newcastle, flying to where was this flying to? LIBR, Brindisi in Italy. LIBR, pop that in there. return. And now if we go to the init B page, that should start to work out some details. Really, you should do the init A page before going to your performance page. So I've actually done that the wrong way around, just as an example to someone who asked a little bit earlier. But yeah, basically going back to your original question, the block is the block fuel that you're using for the flight that you are doing. Okay, so what we've got there. So Adrian, thank you for this. Regardless with the centre of gravity, 0 fuel weight. Can you try something? Simreef payload of about 16.5 tons, which pushes the centre of gravity too low. How to solve this? Yeah, I'll show you how to solve that. If we open the weights page, right. So yeah, a good payload, about between 17 and 18 tons, and you can see there, the moment you do that, as you say, you are out of the centre of gravity limit. So what do you do? Well, what would they do in real life? At the moment you can see that Microsoft Flight Simulator just balances your payload and spreads it out quite evenly. Obviously you can't touch the pilot or the co-pilot. I'm not 90 kilograms. I should change that. There must be a way to go and edit that. So business class, forward baggage and rear baggage. Well, all you do is let's put a couple of thousand kilograms in the rear baggage, so change that from a 4 to a 6, and take that 2,000 that you've just added away from the forward baggage, so change that from a 4 to a 2, and now you've got the payload that you're after, but you've got a much more balanced centre of gravity. So it's it's something the load masters would do on the ground to make sure that you've got a good centre of gravity there. Noticed you have in your menu settings kilograms. How do I change that from pounds? Someone else asked me this a while back. Let me see if I can find it. It will be under general, probably miscellaneous. And there it is, units of measurement. So I have it as the hybrid setting, so similar to the metric system, but uses feet for altitude, which is what you want. You don't want to be using meters for altitude. That will not unless you're flying in China. I think China and some eastern countries, they use meters. Which incidentally, let me just go back, if you do find yourself flying the A320 in China and you need to use meters, there is an option just here to turn on the metric altimeter display on the primary flight display, so you can see the meters displayed down at the bottom. It's not going to do it because I've not got the ideas aligned. If I just turn those on, will that, because this is set just to align instantly. There it is. So you've now got meters displayed on the primary flight display, 355 meters, which is the equivalent of 1,160 feet. Okay, so that's that. Good evening all. Is TCAS system available in Microsoft Flight Sim 2020? Yes, it is. It is down here. So when you're on the ground, don't turn it on until you are about to enter the runway. That's just to protect the ground staff. You turn it all the way to the right, TARA. The downside is it only shows traffic from Microsoft Flight Simulator, which means if you're flying on the VATSIM network, then it will not display it. So if you're flying in multiplayer or AI traffic or live AI traffic, any of those things, they are displayed, but not VATSIM, not yet. Let's have a little quick look at other things. Yeah, so that's the metric system sorted. Can I show how to get the FlightLab Studio working? That would be a completely different tutorial, and if I'm perfectly honest, there is already quite a few good tutorials on that, which is what I use to get it working. So I'd only be emulating one of those. Literally, have a quick search on YouTube for oh, sorry, hang on, the FlightLab Studio. Sorry, I'm thinking of the OBS program that I have for streaming, the FlightLab Studio. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory as well with the documentation that comes with it. And I'm going to say this honestly, if I can get stuff like that working, I guarantee you will be able to, because I'm not very computer literate. It was just a case of reading the instructions and doing exactly what it told me to do, and it did. It works seamlessly, as you can see from the streams. So download that, it's free. Download it, and yeah, just have a quick read of the manual that comes with it. It's very, very good and self-explanatory. Game Lithuanian, can you talk about the block thing? I think I've already covered that. So that's the block fuel that we enter just there for the amount of fuel you've got. So block is the amount of fuel you've got. So typed in 8.9, and we've got 8.9 kilograms of fuel just there. So that's about right. Okay, so we're going to have to wrap this up in the next few minutes. I'll just keep scrolling through, see if there's anything that we've not covered. Let's see. So that's fine. Oh my god, it's so easy, Christian. I know it sounds easy when someone shows you, though, doesn't it? Anything's easy when you know how. Hope the fly-by-wire solved the top of descent issue. Yes, I'm sure they will, but as I said, I do have a quick tutorial coming out on that this weekend. So until it is solved, that'll be absolutely fine. Boxer Steve has just started lashing it down in Newcastle. We're actually sat on the ground at Newcastle, but I'm not using live weather, as you can clearly see. Does SimBrief have an A320 Neo profile yet? Right, Lockstar, that is a great question. Let me find a link for you, because I have made one. So I've also made it downloadable. Just bear with me while I try and find that for you. I need to find it, and then I'll be able to tell you where it is. It's on one of my tutorials. It might be the SimBrief tutorial, which would make sense now, wouldn't it? Do you know what? I can't find it. But basically, I'll find you this link, send it you, and there's an option that you can actually download the SimBrief tutorial right there. So that should help get that sorted for you. I can't find it. How embarrassing. If you go to my channel and search for and find the SimBrief tutorial, it is on the... Oh, hang on. Let me just copy that link. There we go. Right, so just pop a link in there. There you are. There's a link to the SimBrief tutorial, and it will show you, has a link in the video description about, you can just download the profile of the A320 Neo, and it's the profile for the A320 Neo in Microsoft Flight Simulator, so all the weights are correct as well. Captain Viv, is it necessary to fill out all the stuff in the flight management computer? Short answer, yes, just because it's, and I think you see a lot of people complaining on Facebook that the aircraft's not doing what they expect it to do, and they can't understand what's happening and why. And a lot of the time, I am afraid to say, it's down to pilot error. Even the default A320, let alone the fly-by-wire one, is quite a complicated aircraft. And if it's not all set up correctly, strange things can happen. I mean, let's face it, some strange things happen when it is set up correctly. But yeah, you need to have everything set up. So you need your performance pages set up. You need your init A, init B pages set up. Just if you don't want any unexpected surprises, you need to have it all set up so that everything that is currently modelled does work perfectly well. Again, why could I not pass the medical? That's a personal question, but I don't mind sharing. It was my eyesight. My eyesight sadly wasn't good enough. Wear glasses, wear contact lenses, but not good enough to get me in line for the Class 1 medical. And sadly, let's face it, your eyesight doesn't get better with age, does it? Victor Tango, thank you for this video. No problem at all. I hope we've answered some good questions. When will the replay mode be added? I have no idea. I know it's on the list of things for Azomo to have a look at. But yeah, it's something that we love to have, because when you make that great landing, you want to go back and watch it again, don't you? Adrian, could you share your SimBrief aircraft setup? Yeah, I've just done that in the link. Go to that link, it'll take you to SimBrief tutorial, and in the video description for that is a download link so you can download it. Christian, is everyone having issues with live weather recently? Last 2 flights, 0 clouds, QNH 2992. Yeah, that does sound pretty much like default, doesn't it? So, it's not sure. Not sure about that. How do you get the zero fuel weight central gravity figures to show in the menu? That we've covered a little bit earlier, so if you rewind the video to show you that, basically it's just a case of resizing the weights window just there. What is the preparation before we start the engines? Oh wow. Aside from programming all of the MCDU, okay, tell you what, we'll quickly go through it. So, preparation before starting the engines. So, I'm going to read off a real-life checklist here. You can guess which airline this came from. So, engine masters need to be off. Engine mode selector needs to be set to normal. Weather radar needs to be off. Landing gear down. That sounds obvious, but you need to make sure it is. Both wiper selectors are off. You need to make sure that the windscreen wipers are not going to start the moment you turn the engine on. Battery power, turn it on. External power on if available, so we can turn that on. I've turned that off, turn that on. Once we've done that, we should do an APU fire test, which is clicking up here. There we go. That's the fire test. We then start the APU. Start the APU master, count to 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you can hit the start button. Wait for that to start. Cockpit lights should be set, so that's turn on the navigation lights, make sure that everyone on the ground knows there's people on the aircraft. So that's the cockpit lights. We need to press the ECAM recall button, and that basically just recalls any messages that we may have missed, so there's nothing really down there at the moment. We then just go through a couple of other flows. So we turn on the oxygen supply for the crew, we turn the fuel pumps on, and we align the adheres, which we've already done. Flaps, check the position of those, make sure they're up. Speed brake, make sure that's retracted and disarmed. Parking brake on, and that's basically the preliminary cockpit checklist. Before starting the engines, that checklist needs to be complete. Then we need to turn the signs on, so that's the seatbelt sign, no smoking sign, emergency lights on those. The adheres, check that they're on and aligned. Fuel quantity needs to be already set, and a quick check down here, make sure it is all balanced, which it is. That's good. You don't want one side heavy than the other. The flight management guidance system should be all set, so that's basically all the information, the flight plan, etc., all set, and your performance pages all set as well. There's a separate tutorial on the page about getting those set up. Make sure your altimeter is set to local pressure, which is currently 0983 in Newcastle. Windows and doors all need to be closed and armed. We then turn on the rotating beacon light and the wing lights, by which point the APU would already have started after you'd set up the MCDU for all its flight details. So once that's we've got the avail listed there, you can go in here and just see that should be firing up. There we go, that's actually now available, so that should turn green. Once that's available, turn on the APU bleed, and then we want to get some air blowing into the aircraft because it's cold in Newcastle. And I don't know if you can just hear the fans starting to blow the air. Once we've got that, you are all ready to start the engines. Lock the cockpit door, start the engine mode selector, pop it to ignition, just down there, and then we start engine 1. Always start engine 1 first on the Neo, and that's everything you need to. I know I've just rinsed through that, haven't I? And that's everything you need to do. That's basically a cold and dark preparation start. How to set altitude and speed constraints of the waypoints. Right, okay. Very quickly, have we got? Let me just see if we can do this. So I'm just going to select a departure. I love the name of the SID. The girl, just the girly departure. Right, so what you should be able to do is, if you can go on the right hand side here, there's the altitude constraint. You should be able to change these if you wish, so just enter in 6,000. Does that change? There you go. So that's changed there. You can put a speed constraint in as well if you wish. Does that work? No, not yet implemented. We get a nice little message telling you that. You can also say, you can set a constraint of, say, you want to be beneath, you want to be below or above, so below 5,000 feet by that particular waypoint that I selected. And there you go. That's a fly-by-wire thing. You need the fly-by-wire mod for that because it doesn't work in the default airport. Adrian, no problem at all. Glad the live Q&A this evening has been of some use. Scotland, hello from Scotland. Is it snowing up there? See, so if there's anything else quickly that I can answer before I have to go, we will do one of these again because they do seem to be quite popular, and I can't always get round to everything. What fuel profile did I use in SimBrief? Was it minus 25? It is. To be fair, anywhere between minus 25 and minus 10 works quite nicely, and that's just because the fuel rate isn't quite right in the way that the simulator works it at the moment. Eastbirds, check rudder trim if it banks. I've had it a few times. The rudder trim should never really be touched. I certainly don't touch it. Start engine 2, because the rudder trim's down here, look, and you've also got a little button there which should reset it. So even if you've got it trimmed over like that, quick touch of that should reset that to 0. But it's worth noticing. I'll have a look at that. I don't think if it's it. I don't know if it is or not. HD, good evening. Here to explain everything I need to know apart from low visibility procedures, or we might have to do a special on that. Good stuff. Yeah, so engine 1 always first. Does not matter if it's the CAO as well. I didn't know that. I just thought it was a Neo thing. So thank you for clarifying that. Lockstar, I don't have the Thrustmaster Airbus Quadrant, not yet anyway. Someone did share in one of the Facebook groups their settings and how that looked like, so you can have a search through there, use the search function on Facebook, because I know a lot of people were obviously trying to get that work, although I think in one of the latest updates for Flight Sim they've actually implemented a setting for it now. I don't know, I don't have it. But there you are. Why do you need rudder trim? To be honest, I've never used it. I don't know if HD can answer that. I would presume if you're doing some sort of manual flying in for maybe a crosswind, if the ILS, if the autopilot's out, or if I don't know, maybe a crosswind landing where the winds are blowing too excessively that you'd knock the autopilot off. Saves work on the feet, presumably. Yeah, I've never used the rudder trim, so I'll get HD to answer that one for me quickly if he can before we have to go. HD, yeah, HD is the real pilot who has been a godsend on many of the live streams, and of course the Q&A sessions as well, because what I can't answer I can just quite neatly hand over. HD is for when you're in when the donkey dies. Yeah, okay. That basically means that when one of the flight computers die, so you can use the rudder trim. So it saves a little bit of work for the pilot. Is that why some of the Airbus is called Neo? Basically, they're the new engines, different types of engines. They're more fuel efficient, quieter. But Neo, I think it just basically means new, doesn't it? In some Latin, maybe, I don't know. So they're just new engines. Alright guys, I'm afraid I'm going to have to call that for the evening. But what I will say is I really like the fact that I've now got EasyJet ground crew. Look at this. I'll zoom in a little bit more. Let me see if I can get this working. The drone cam. I'm no good at using the drone cam. Can we have a look? Yeah, look at that. There we go. I've now got EasyJet ground staff waiting to load the aircraft on on our next flight. Wonderful. Captain Viv, what happens, so very quickly, what happens if you don't fill out the information in the A320 computer? The aircraft will behave unexpectedly, certainly in the sim. In real life, it probably wouldn't allow you to take off. I don't know. It's basically fill out the information. It saves a lot of hassle later on. Alright, Turtle, how did I get that ground crew? That was, go to the website flightsim.to. There are loads of mods on there, and I saw that one. I thought, you know what, I'm not one for modding things up, but I liked that, so I went for it. Alright guys, I hope you've enjoyed this this informal chat this evening. Sorry I didn't get around to answering every question we had. We will do another one of these, I promise. We'll probably do one for a little bit longer next time, and we'll actually take off as well. But without HD here at the start, I wasn't going to get into flying because I can't concentrate on 9 things at once. Thanks very much guys. Please hit the subscribe button for more notifications of live streams and of course tutorials and things like that, and I hope that's been useful for you, and we hope to see you all again very soon. Have a good weekend everyone. Bye bye for now.